So nearby Nisha, we're talking about the X-Men. You know you got to put a clip in of the Japanese X-Men intro. God, that song goes so fucking hard.
Anime intros are just some of the best
Top tier, aren't they?
songs ever. Like on my playlist on my Spotify, I've got just like some anime intros. Like there's One Punch Man, got Beyblade on there.
That's the Beyblade ones go super hard.
It's epic. Yu-Gi-Oh.
The Yu-Gi-Oh one is like a classic.
My God.
There's a few English ones that I know kind of do all right, like Rock the Dragons. It's gonna be a classic, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
like,
I love that.
Dragon, Rock, and that's so fucking edgy. Mm-hmm. But then like you'll go watch like Attack on Titan. And it's like, why is there a ghost dinosaur charging? Because I never understood why in the Attack on Titan intro there's just a dinosaur and a whale. As this like orchestral, like fucking epic song is playing in the background, and just like giant titans are fighting each other. For almost their entire comic history, the X-Men have been defined by their seemingly endless struggle for people to recognise their humanity and not call them freaks just so they can fire laser beams from their eyeballs. An idea Marvel themselves shit all over in the 1990s to save about 5% on their taxes.
What?
So, first things first, like people may be unfamiliar with the X-Men, like near enough the entire run of the X-Men and virtually every piece of X-Men media has dealt with the struggle of the X-Men and mutants in general to be recognised as human. And I don't think anything sums it up more than the recurring antagonist that is the Sentinels, robots that are designed to hunt down and eradicate mutants because humans naturally fear them, and then the X-Men and other mutants being like, please stop trying to kill us in the street with giant robots, I just want to work.
Yeah, like they are living, breathing people.
Yeah, they're people. That's all they want. They just want to live their lives. With the exception of, like, Magneto. He was like, no, fuck you. Yeah. And he's kind of got a reason for being like that because he's like a child of the Holocaust and he's seen what happens when humans fear something they don't understand and try and eradicate it.
It's so bad. Like, he saves that guy's life, doesn't he? You know, when the, I forgot what causes it now, but he's at that, like, steel place, isn't he, where he works, and that guy almost gets killed by like some steel falling on
and he
him.
dobs him in immediately.
Yeah. And then he ends up getting his wife and daughter killed because of it.
Because he's scared of mutants. Even though he's just seen firsthand that they're not scary, they're not a threat. They're just he's just trying to live his life. And that's the thing, that's a common recurring thing in like all X-Men related media. And it still baffles me to this day. You'll get people out there who don't realise that the X-Men are a stand-in for the civil rights movement. Especially when you have like a character like Professor X, Malcolm X, and Dr. Martin Luther King. Dr. X, Professor X. It's like, you know, it's a combination of those things, and then in the same vein, Professor X and Magneto's conflicting ideals and their approach to how to integrate mutants with humanity are different. It's like Magneto's all about, you know, mutant supremacy. You know what? Fuck humanity. Let's fuck off to a giant meteorite called Magneto Island and just live our lives. And Professor X is like, no, I know mutual collaboration between us can help, like, you know, us all succeed. All ships rise with the tide.
It's because like they've obviously grown up in different ways. Like he was, like I said, he was a part of a concentration camp. Yeah. Where obviously Charles was brought up differently.
Yeah. Like he had an altogether more hopeful upbringing, where he's, you know, he's a rich kid essentially. He's not really struggled all that much, whereas Magneto has, and that's part of their conflicts in the comics, movies, shows, and games have always had that like front and center. Like, you know, it's the mutants just trying to be recognised as human, and then the humans be like, no, fuck you, none of that. And that's where the parallels to real life come in. Like you have that first live-action X-Men movie. We have that senator just trying to like scare people. Who've been like, oh, there's a little girl who can walk through walls. What about if she walked into the president's office or a missile silo? It's like, well, she's not, is she? It's like, what about if you pulled out a gun right now and started shooting people in your audience? Wouldn't that be dangerous? But you're not going to, are you?
Yeah, it's just assuming the worst.
Exactly, assuming the worst of, like, you know, this other group because you don't understand them and fear them and are worried that they will supplant you. And that's where the very obvious similarities to the civil rights movement come in of like, well, mutants, well, you're allowed to live, but you can't, you know, integrate with humans. That'd be too dangerous. Yeah. And, you know, in real life, you had black people not being able to use like water fountains and had to sit at the back of the bus. It's like, well, you're allowed to take part in society, but only in the way that we deem acceptable. It's like, no, fuck you.
Yeah. But I think, because I feel like if you start like isolating them, they would want to rebel. So
Yeah,
I'm being treated differently, so I am going to use my powers and I'm going to kill you. Whereas if
that's-
you treat them nice like everyone else,
Exactly, yeah.
as part of the community, they're like, yeah, okay, I'm not going to kill you with my laser eye beams.
That's where you have, like, again, the parallels to real life of like Martin Luther King marching. And I think a paraphrase quote that I'm not quite remembering, but there'll be a proper version of it below in a fact bar, is something like, riots are the voice of the unheard, or something like that, where he was like outright saying violence is the only way that our message is going to get across because they've not listened when we've been nice.
Yeah.
And that's that thing, isn't it, of like with the mutants, of like, oh, we treat them like shit for 50 years straight and suddenly they're like trying to attack us. What gives?
I don't get it. I don't understand.
So all we did was build robots that try and eradicate them, and now they've got a problem. What's going on?
Yeah, honestly. Treat them nice, treat them like you would anyone else. That wouldn't have happened.
And you've got no problems, yeah. But, oh, what about if they have powers and use them for like nefarious ends? It's like, well, it's a good job that people without superpowers but have powers in other ways don't abuse the shit out of those, isn't it? That's one of those subtle things I don't think people pick up on when it comes to like X-Men media, where you have politicians arguing that, oh, if they've got power, of course they're going to abuse it. And it's like, well, not everyone who has power abuses it, and that's a lot of projection there, because who abuses power more than politicians? And it's like they can't fathom that people would have power and use it for, you know, the greater good, because they have power and they only want to, like, you know, serve their own self-interests. And they treat mutants who use their powers to help others without any expectation of like remuneration as inherently suspicious. Like, why would they do that? Why would people use this power and not use it for their own like selfish ends? Like, because some people are just inherently good. They're not dickheads.
Yeah, you just assume like, oh, not just a nice person. Just because they've got powers, oh, they're going to be some sort of villain.
Yeah.
But no, people can actually be nice.
They can, yeah.
Not have some sort of agenda.
And what makes this hilarious and kind of meta is that Marvel, the company, actually argued for the case that mutants aren't people to save 5% on their taxes.
So they argued that they aren't human.
Yes, in court as well. And they won. So the story behind this is tax law in the United States is a tricky beast. And specifically in regards to X-Men, a guy working for, and I'll get the name here, it is Toy Biz, who are the subsidiary of Marvel, who were taking care of their action figures and things like that, realised that the definition of a doll was very specific. And he noticed that the definition of a doll was fairly strictly defined under US tax law. And it was as follows, that a doll was limited to anything that could be described as a representation of a human being, with everything else being classified as simply a toy. And this was important because dolls were subject to a 12% tax levy, whereas toys were a much lower tax of 6.8%, which meant that Marvel could save about 5.2% on their tax bill if they could argue that things they were making weren't dolls, but toys, which meant that they had to argue in court that figures of mutants like Wolverine and Magneto weren't human, but monsters or animals.
I mean, with Wolverine, I can imagine that'd be quite easy because he'd just put the claws on him. Because obviously humans don't have claws coming out of the fists.
That was literally the case they made. Like, they had a lawyer stand there and point to a picture of Wolverine. Like, well, Wolverine could never be considered to be human because they have such animalistic traits in the claws which aren't typical of a human. In effect, mirroring the exact same arguments, they're villains making their own comic books. During that argument, like, well, we can't give like these people the same rights as us. Look at how different they are. How could we ever allow them to integrate with society? And like Marvel's in court making that exact argument. Of like, well, Wolverine's not human. He doesn't deserve the same rights as a human. Why would he? He should be considered to be an animal. So we can save 5% on our taxes.
I respect that. I respect saving the money.
I respect them saving the money, but it's so deliciously ironic that they were making the exact same arguments their own villains did to save a little bit of money.
It's funny.
And what makes this story hilarious is that Marvel didn't just stop at arguing that the X-Men weren't human. They tried to argue that virtually every character in their comics was not human, singling out characters like the Kingpin and saying that he is so large and in charge that his proportions could not even be considered to be human, and as such should not be subject to the tax that like a doll would have, because he's clearly not a human, even though in the comics Kingpin is just a human man who's quite buff. He's just a guy, he has no superpowers, he's just buff. And Marvel's like, well, he's clearly not human. Why, look how buff he is. He's so butt, how can he possibly be
No
human?
one
And
could ever be that hench.
the thing is, though, I respect that move, though, because arguing against basic logic in court does sound like a very Kingpin move. That does sound like something Wilson Fisk would do in the comics. Of, like, trying to rules lawyer his way out of an obvious slam dunk case.
Oh, that's great. Do you think then, like, figurines like the Dragon Ball figurines, would they be considered?
Technically, there's a lot of
monsters?
shenanigans that goes on with like tax law, and there's a couple of famous examples I'm going to mention now. One is Converse, the trainers. I think you're wearing a pair right now.
I am, yep.
They are technically classified as slippers in some parts of the world for tax reasons. And if you look
Some
at a
slippers.
brand new pair of Converse, they will have a very fine layer of fuzz on the bottom sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
And the way they do that is because slippers have a very specific definition, as do trainers and sneakers. Mm-hmm. And the definition of slippers includes that they have to be like, fluffy on the inside or something like that. So they deliberately put this layer of fluff on them so they can be technically classified as slippers and thus subject to a lower tax.
Okay, so I wear my slippers to work. That's good.
And another famous example is Jaffa cakes, which in the UK, for tax reasons, are classified as cakes, but are sold sometimes as biscuits.
Yeah, because there's that argument, isn't there?
Yeah.
Is it a cake or a biscuit?
And they actually had to decide that in court because in the UK, a cake covered in chocolate is not subject to any additional tax. However, a biscuit covered in chocolate is, because that's classified as a luxury item.
Oh, like
So-
the chocolate digestives.
Yes,
All luxurious
it's
biscuits.
counted as luxury, yeah, and it's one of those, it goes all the way back like hundreds of years of like putting chocolate on something makes it luxury. It's not an essential item, whereas cakes were seen as being quite essential.
Yeah.
And as a result, cakes are not subject to the same tax that biscuits are. And the government were trying to argue that McVitie's were weaseling their way out of paying tax that the government was owed by selling their biscuits as cakes. And what they had to do was bake a giant Jaffa cake to prove that they are cakes, just very small. And for anyone curious about what the law says a biscuit is and what a cake is, the general rule of thumb is that a cake goes hard when it goes stale, whereas a biscuit goes soft.
Yeah, I was going to say probably something to do with the texture.
Yeah.
Because I was going to say, like, biscuits are usually, solid and crunchy.
But they go
and then,
soft when they're stale.
Yeah.
Cakes go hard when they're stale, and Jaffa cakes do go hard when they're stale.
Because it has the cakey texture.
Yes,
so.
has the cakiness. And even the camera we are using to record this is built the way it is because of these tax rules. And how long can we record on our camera, Nisha, before we have to shut it off?
Well, it stops recording after 30 minutes.
It doesn't stop recording after 30. It stops recording after 29 minutes and 59
Oh.
seconds. And do you know why? And do you know- and
Close
the thing is-
enough.
And do you know what? That sounds like I'm being pedantic. But do you know why it's specifically that number and not 30 minutes?
It's obviously some sort of tax law.
It is, yes, because under UK tax law, if a camera can record for more than 30 minutes, it's taxed as a video camera, not a camera.
Yeah.
And the taxes on a video camera are higher than on a camera. So as a result, everyone making like DSLRs that can record video only allow them to record for 29 minutes and 59 seconds. Because if they could record for that 1 second more, they'd have to pay more in tax when they imported
It
them.
seems so daft, doesn't it?
But they're the loopholes that you have to jump through.
Yeah.
And that's why you hire these really good lawyers who can, dig their way through tax law and figure out loopholes like this, like Marvel did, where a lawyer came up to them and told them, I can save you 5% on all of your taxes paid on your very successful toy line. All you've got to do is argue in court that the X-Men aren't human. And Marvel did, and they won. Because of course they did.
Save money!
Yay!
Fuck tax.
Just completely disregarding the entire storyline we've spent 50 years crafting to save a relatively small amount of money. And what's more businessman than that? Now I'm thinking I might get all of you guys in and just do one of bring in your hypest intros to a TV show. Like, what intro to a TV show got you so fucking hype? Just so we can put all the clips in without worry of getting copyright strikes. Like in this one we mentioned Attack on Titan, we most likely cannot use that clip.
Yeah.
Because as hype as that intro is, it's performed by a real band, and that real band's record company will not let us do that.
That's a shame.
It is a shame, 'cause it's a high-class intro and I'd love
We'll
to show
just do
people
it on the side channel. You
can,
can
yeah.
put it there.
We don't give a fuck if that thing gets copyright struck.
No. As long as it doesn't get 3 strikes.
Yeah, because
Fine.
it doesn't make any money. The only money it makes is from the Patreon, which you can also find linked below. And it allows us to continue making this kind of content. Because it just pays for things like this office, the equipment, your guys' salary and things like that. My salary, I guess, if people care about that.
And it's just fun, like, seeing all the different types of videos going up as well, because like, everyone has so many different ideas. And then we do our own thing, or we, like, team up and do, like, one of my favourites recently was the Teabag challenge we did. Yeah. That was really good, because we made a deal to not look at each other's like, challenges until, like, Brad compiled it all together. It was just interesting to see everyone's take on it.
No, I think I won. So I want to do another one of, like, getting you guys. I want you to open a bottle of beer in the most interesting way. And I'm going to abstain from that challenge because there's no fucking way I'm losing. I'm not going to lose that one, ever. Yours
was just, like, one smooth motion. So, yeah, yours was stylish, I think, your Teabag challenge.
It was.
Mine was just
bam!
like...
Well, that's all those years working on a bar. Because, like, I used to spend literally hours when I was still in a bar. Ice cube, bang. Bang. Lemon wedge, bang.
I was just impressed because you watched everyone's.
Yes.
You watch everyone's. I was just more impressed that my Teabag landed on that cardboard box flap.
Yeah.
How? How?
Mystery solved.
Fucking paranormal shit, but yeah. And the fact I lost it down the back of the cupboard at the top, I was like, okay, I'm keeping all this in because
it's funny.
This is not going to happen all the time.
Whereas I edited mine to be like 15 seconds of like, bish, bosh, job done. Not fucking around.
It's like, how many takes did it actually take?
It's like 3 or 4.
Confession.
No, it took 3. But that's the thing, like, I'm quite good at that. Because I said I spent years just on like dicking around, like throwing things into the thing. And like, I'm quite good at throwing bottle tops into the bin. I can like, pew! Because I used years and years of like 50 bottle tops on a bar, just stood there waiting for the next order to come in.
So I'm surprisingly okay at doing the basketball. You know, in the arcades where you just throw the basketball one after the other. I'm surprisingly okay at that.
I'll just reach over and put it in. Because I'm like tall enough to go, whoop.
It's called cheating.
It's not cheating. It's called... Do you know what it is? It's a loophole. And if we've learned something today, loopholes are fine as long as you get away with it.
As well. Literally a loophole.
Yep. No one's saying that I can't do that. It's just frowned upon.